So I need just to test whether the microphone is working well. So do you hear me on the backstage? Ah, perfect. So hello everyone. My name is Petr Kunstad, and I'm representing here Thales company that is also a gold partner of that event. So let me welcome you also in the name of Thales. And I put this, let's say, the name for this presentation, how to exploit cloud adoption for making IT more secure and convenient. Why? Because I was considering that, let's say, once you, let's say, enable any kind of the security within the large organization like enterprise companies, it typically starts to bother user, to end user. So I would like to introduce or to explain or to show you how, let's say, the Thales approach to let's say, enablement of any kind of the security, namely for the situation that you move your IT infrastructure from on-prem to cloud, to not to bother or to bore, let's say, the end users. So this is the aim of this presentation. You will see, let's say, what Thales is about, what we are doing. And also I will try to show you some of, let's say, the nice tools that we have for the IT security. So let's start. Who we are. We recently, let's say, did a joint venture between the Gemalto and Thales. Officially, it was like the Thales acquires the Gemalto. Who of you knows at least one of these titles, the Gemalto or Thales? Just raise your hands. Oh, perfect. So I do not need, let's say, to stay more time on that. In the total, right now, we have the team of 80,000 employees. We are in 68 countries. I'm from Prague office, where are, let's say, the base more than 400 employees, mostly for R&D. And you can see on that slide that we invest a lot into the development of the IT products, 1 billion into the R&D. But Thales is not focusing just and only on e-security or IT security products. Thales is also well known for their investment and their products in aerospace, in defense, in the space of the transportation and so on. But today I will talk mostly about the IT security and the products that would help you to ensure that once you move to cloud, you will be absolutely secured. So before I start with my presentation, I didn't, let's say, realize that before me will be Konrad with his artificial intelligence. So I used also his, let's say, the use case in my presentation just to explain why it is really important to think about the IT security also from that perspective that, okay, there are plenty of new and modern technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, let's say, the big data analysis. And it's used typically, or maybe why it was invented, it was for the positive results, like by the, let's say, the wise or clever people. But these technologies are also used by the hackers. So we have to think about that, okay, the face recognition and deep fake, it's something what can be used also for the hacker as a tool. So this example is about the deepfake. I never know that that Konrad will, let's say, present the same. And you can see on the left side is the, I think it's a head of the Communism Party in China. And on the right side, it was, I have to put it back. You can see the Prime Minister of Canada. And based on the artificial intelligence, you can make or you can create the completely fake videos. And based on that, you can mimic or, let's say, to put, let's say, the interest of the people into the fake news. So based on that, I put just the example that the UK-based energy company was duped out of, let's say, some of the money based on that sophisticated deepfake. So you have to imagine that it's just the example of how we can use the artificial intelligence to make fake videos. But for example, this example, there were used the fake voice, let's say, that you can imagine that someone will call you and it will completely sound like, I don't know, your sister, mother, or father, and will deeply ask you for to do, I don't know, the money transformation or transfer because of some, I don't know, the big issue at the family, at the street. So you will not confirm or validate whether this voice is exactly from your father or your mother or your sister. You will just to use your emotion, and you will believe that it is definitely the originator who is calling to you. So, but this is what we have to think about in terms of the IT security, that there is, let's say, the threat evolution. I have mentioned some of them: artificial intelligence, quantum computing. It's also something what there is plenty of rumors whether quantum computers are already there or not. There are some of, let's say, the parties that believes that these quantum computers are already there, but nobody, let's say, government or for example, you can imagine that in the United States there is also some nice, let's say, the technologies or techniques like quantum computing. Do they, let's say, to publish this information? No, definitely they will not tell you that. For example, the standard crypto operations that are encrypted by, I don't know, 2 kilo keys will never encrypt, let's say, the data or the communication, because the quantum computers will be able to decrypt it in a minute, hours, or the days. So these techniques are, in these days, used by, let's say, hackers or the people that would like to steal some the sensitive information, and we have to think about what to do. So we can focus on what we can do, but we do not, let's say, think about that it's possible to do. It's mandatory that we have to think about the basis of the security stuff. So once someone is calling you and to mimic the voice in that example that I put in the previous slide, what you have to do, you have to somehow verify that the identity of the people that is calling you for to do some money transfer is exactly the identity of the people that you expect that is on the other side. So this is the identity. Identity is something what is currently or recently the main important point what you have to secure. It's not, let's say, in these days to focus on the secure your landscape of IT infrastructure. Nowadays, everything is situated on the identity side, on the user side. So you have to be sure that your identity or the identity of the party that is exchanging any sensitive information is being secure. And the second part of, let's say, the foundation of the security that we are focusing in Thales is the encryption. Once anybody is stealing or getting the sensitive data, it's, let's say, useless in case these data are encrypted. So you have to focus on which level, on which layer you will start with the encryption. There are plenty of opportunities, plenty of, let's say, the options. The first of them, it's known to all of us that, I don't know, you can enable the BitLocker on the laptop. That once someone is stealing you whole the laptop, it will never be used, the data inside. But what about the situation that the laptop is open and you can get the access inside? So you have to focus on also the encryption on the file level. And then if we would like to have, let's say, the best approach in the data encryption, you can focus also on the application level. So once the data are inserted or placed into the application, for example, web application, it can be encrypted and stored already in encrypted form. So this is what we are focusing on in Thales. I was just to pick up two of the main, let's say, the parts of the products and the solution for the identity solution and for the encryption solution. But we have plenty of others, and I believe that I will mention them during the presentation. So let's focus on the data encryption. I think this is the good example in terms of we started this presentation with the movement of IT infrastructure to cloud. So this is the example that even the CTO of the Amazon is saying that the encryption is the foundation. It is the something what is the must once you consider to move any data in Amazon, in Azure, in I don't know, the IBM cloud. It doesn't care. You have to consider how to encrypt this data, because this is the value of your company. This is the value that you have to you have to solve. So, and it's really important that and think about that many of these cloud providers already have the solution for the data encryption. If any one of you is responsible for data encryption and doing some IT outside of your infrastructure in cloud, you know that there are plenty of options that you can start to generate the encryption keys, never mind whether it is symmetric keys or asymmetric keys. There is the key vaults and so on. But everything is generated on their own. It means that they use their the system, machine, and so on. Also, the key vault or the storage of this key is outside of your control. So even that guy's, Werner Vogel's, CTO of the Amazon, is strictly recommends you that you should bring your own keys. It means that the keys that is generated on your side, and you will prevent the situation that once anything will happen with Amazon or your, I don't know, the virtual servers or your data, you will still be the holder of the key, and you will let's say you will be only one who will be able to dispose these data. So once we look at on the portfolio that we approaching or recommends to the customer, I have started with this slide because it shows you, let's say, the layers that you can implement the encryption itself. As the most, let's say, the easier way, once you look at on the, let's say, how easy it is to implement, you can look at from the bottom to up. Is to implement the encryption on the disk level. So it means, as I use the example of the BitLocker, so you can implement the encryption of the whole disk layer. What is the, let's say, the most typical scenarios on customer side is to use the encryption on the file level. So you can imagine that once you decided which file or which folder, which type of data will be encrypted, you can also play, let's call it the game with the access management. So you can set the transparent encryption for those users who are, let's say, who should have the access to those data, and these data are transparent. You can imagine it, for example, for financial data. So all people that are, for example, in Active Directory in the group of financial division can have the access to those data, and these data will be for them transparently visible. So there will be the full numbers, full names, all these sensitive information. For those users who belongs to the group of privileged users, for example, root, administrators, or others, these data can be accessible. For example, they can read the date of the creation of this file. They can check the size of the file. But once they look at inside the file, the data will be encrypted. So it will not be, let's say, possible to be somehow in a proper way used by the privileged users that do not have anything with the financial data. So this is really, really good solution, really easy to implement. We call it volumetric transparent encryption. But there are plenty of, let's say, the risks still behind that. So you can see that there is also the possibility to put the more secure way the solution to encrypt the data. I have mentioned it that it's a volumetric application solution that will allow you to, based on the API that is open from the volumetric solution, and provide it to the end, let's say, the developers or end users, to develop the solution that during the time once you insert or you place the data into the application, these data are encrypted and stored into the database directly in the encrypted form. And how does it look for the end user? As I showed you on the file system level or layer, for those users that belongs to financial services, for example, they can see these data because they have the access to those keys that are responsible for the data encryption. They can see these data unencrypted. So the data, name, surname, address, I don't know, the wage or I don't know, the mortgage size or something like that, they can see it transparently. So for them, it looks like the data are not encrypted. And for those users that do not have access to these data encryption keys, they will see these data encrypted. There is also plenty of other options like tokenization, data masking, and so on, but I will mention it later. So this is the structure of the solution. You can imagine that many of companies, enterprise customers are using plenty of different solutions for different layers. For once we are talking about the layer of the data that are stored on the file, on the system level, they use, I don't know, the solution for that particular way. Once we are talking about application encryption, it's used the different solution. So we are offering to those customers, let's say, the one single platform that is capable to do transparent encryption for it. Never, let's say, it doesn't care whether it is structured or unstructured data. We are able to manage those data on various of operational system, on Windows, on Linux, and others. We can also introduce by the application encryption the wise manner of the, let's say, the encryption of the data from application side, and it's called format present with encryption. What does it mean? It means that once you, for example, to put into the field of, I don't know, the post office number, the data will be encrypted by that way that it will look, this encrypted format will look the same like the original side. Also the same you can set for the name, surname, street address, and so on. So from first have a look on that encrypted data, it will look like the original data, like these data are unencrypted. So it's a good for that, let's say, the situation that you do not want to change anything on the database side, you do not want to change anything on the storage size, everything will be the same. The encryption is one of the techniques that helps you to, let's say, to secure the sensitive data that coming into your organization through the application level, but you can also leverage the tokenization or data masking. So you can just do, for example, to mask part of the data, or you can just to exchange the data by some token. I have mentioned also that in these days, there are plenty of organizations that do not operate the data just inside of their infrastructure, that all of these databases or applications are under their hands. But there are also, let's say, many of applications or many of data stored in the cloud. So in these days, it's not, let's say, black or white. It means that, okay, we can do the encryption of the data that are under our responsibility inside our infrastructure, but what we will do in cloud, in Amazon, in Azure. So based on this technology, we are able also to interchange or to integrate these keywords from Amazon, from, I don't know, Azure, Salesforce, or others, the cloud providers. And the benefit of these integration between the Warmetric key management and cloud, let's say, the provider, is that you can create the encryption keys on your side. It will be generated, maybe that can be implemented also the most the secure way of the generation of the key on HSM side. We are also one of the biggest provider or producers of the hardware security modules. So you can imagine that the data itself or encryption keys will be generated on HSM side, on hardware security modules. It will be populated to Azure or to Amazon Web Services. And once anything will be encrypted on the cloud side, it will be still held by your let's say HSM solution. Also, let's say solve the situation that anybody is, for example, stealing your or steals your encryption keys on the cloud platform. You will still have the backup of these encryption keys on the key vault that is stored in our system, and it can be the backup back to Azure or to Amazon Web Services. There is also the integration with transparent data encryption. That is most common scenarios for the database encryption. So these technologies can be integrated with Warmatic solution. How does it look in the real scenarios? Once you enable the TDE on, for example, Oracle database, you can set that the crypto materials will not be stored directly on the master database. You can store these crypto materials on external hardware security module. And the benefit of it is that there are plenty of use cases or situation on the real life, the scenarios that, for example, the Uber was hacked by, let's say, the hackers that realized that in the master database there are stored the keys that encrypt the sensitive information in other tables, in other databases. So by this solution, you can get the benefit that once anybody is getting the access to your databases, to your sensitive information, the encryption keys will be still stored on your side. But based on that principles, you will never lose the access to your data. So this is the scenarios or the situation that we see mostly on the customer side, that plenty of different solutions for different scenarios for file encryption, cloud encryption, and so on. So this is the solution that we are offering, one single platform that can solve the whole encryption for different layers, different the use cases. In terms of the type of the implementation, we can implement the key management solution as a hardware appliance that can be also integrated with hardware security module. As I mentioned, that is the most secure way how to store, generate the encryption materials. Or it can be also implemented as a VM appliance, so you can implement it in your infrastructure that way. I will focus slightly on the Warmatic transparent encryption. It is the encryption that is on the layer that we solve these mostly in most scenarios to end customers. It means that they do not need to implement anything on the application layer. They do not need to do any changes on database layer. They just need to implement, we call it the agent, on the particular operational system. So you can implement the Warmatic transparent encryption on Windows machine, on Linux machine, and then you can point just the encryption on the particular folder or particular file. And then you can set the, let's say, access control on that particular field or particular the file set or folder itself. So from the end user perspective, as I mentioned in the let's say the first slide, that the security itself or implementation of any kind of the security can start to somehow the bother or somehow, let's say, the block end users to use these the security techniques. It's a good to know that Warmatic transparent encryption is for those end users absolutely transparent. So they do not know that the data itself are encrypted. So how does it look from the technical perspective? For example, this is the command line of the access to Linux server, and you see that some of the SU user is trying to get the access to some file, and they've got the information that this file is encrypted, and also there is apply the access management, so they do not have the access privileges to see those data. What extension is we are able to put on the top of the Vormetric transparent encryption is live data transformation. This is a really good example where many of customers are stacking with the standard solution, that once you encrypt any data, you will need to be sure that you need in any day to re-encrypt these data once you decided to rotate the key that is responsible for encrypt those data. So what you will do, typically, if we are talking about the mass of sensitive data, you have to stop your operations that operating your data, then you can re-encrypt or decrypt and then encrypt with the new key those data, and then start your operations with those data. So Vormetric live data transformation is a technique that allows you to, during the time that, for example, the database that is encrypted and is being massively used by the reading, writing data, will start the, let's say, the rotation of the key will not influence these end users. So it will allows you to rotate the data, rotate the encryption key, and those data can be used during that time of the rotation key. So it's really, really popular on the market. That you can imagine that the big companies like the telecommunication, the banks, and so on, can't stop their business during the re-encryption of those keys or of those data that are encrypted by the keys. We have also the capabilities to implement the encryption on the layer of the container. So if you are familiar with any kind of the containers like a Docker or OpenShift, you should know that there are plenty of let's say the way how you can store the data. The data can be stored inside of the container, or these data can be stored also outside of these containers. So we have the possibilities to encrypt both of these scenarios, inside or outside of the container itself. We have also the certified solution for SAP HANA solution, the big analytics tool that is operating recently mostly on the cloud side. So we are proven that this solution is capable to encrypt this huge amount of the data. And if anybody of you is focusing on the security intelligence, it means the CM or log management, we have plenty of connectors that are pre-built for getting the information from Vormetric itself to the CM or to log management solution. And for those, the platform like CM or log management, you can get the information who is trying to get access to encrypted data that are these users do not have the access to those data. So based on that, they can do a correlation of that event and let's say evaluate what's happened and why this employee or the user is doing this strange behavior. So once we were talking about Vormetric transparent encryption, I mentioned that it's easy to implement because it's just about the installation of the agent on the particular operational system on Windows or Linux machine, and that's it. It means that the implementation is done within few days. You have to just adjust access control mechanism, who will get the access to which data, what encryption key will be used for which particular folder. But in terms of the application encryption, it's the situation totally different. You have to involve the the developers, and through the REST APIs or other APIs that we have open for that technology, you can leverage, let's say, the encryption from application layer. Just for better visibility on what's happened, this is the example of the securing the credit card data that is going to the web server. So once you put the original data to the application, these data will call through the API, the Warmetric data security management. These data will be encrypted and stored in the database in encrypted form. This is really simple scenarios, and behind that is just the, let's say, the implementation by the API. So everything is prepared for the developers just to navigate that the data before it will go, before it will store those data into database will call before that the Warmetric application security solution. So I have mentioned that encryption is one of the form of securing the data, but also for the other purposes it can be used. So for example, for the credit card is mostly used the data masking or the tokenization. So we have also the capability to introduce the tokenization into that particular use case. So it looks absolutely the similar or absolutely the same. It means that instead of to call by the API the encryption or encrypt and then some of the commands, you can call just to tokenize or detokenize based on the use case that you have in front of you. This is the capabilities of the application crypto suite. So on the left side, you can see that there are, let's say, the integration possibilities through the REST API, C, Java, .NET, most typical protocols, most typical, let's say, way how to do it. So this is how does it look in the real case, in case of the hardware appliance. So you will get this machine that is being used with all of these, let's say, the use cases for transparent data encryption with the database. For the database, you can also use the Warmetric transparent encryption. It's up to you whether you will invoke or leverage the usage of embedded transparent data encryption or the encryption that we are using. For the application, I have already mentioned it, that through the any kind of the API, you can encrypt the data on the application level. So this is the example just of, let's say, security intelligence, the solution. It means the CM solutions, Splunk, IBM Radar, or Microsoft ArcSight. It's the most typical scenarios that we populate the data from Warmetric solution to these, the CM consumers, and because we have also the prepared from these vendors, the connectors, they can get the visibility of what's happened with encrypted data and who is accessing those data. This is the example from Splunk. So there is a nice scenarios that you can see that who is mimic the admin behavior that is trying to get and read data from the file. You will see the information who, when, what is accessing and how it was happened. I have mentioned also, let's say, the movement of the IT infrastructure to cloud. So in that case, we can offer, let's call it, let's say, the bridge that will interchange the crypto materials between the Warmetric solution and those, the cloud providers. And the benefit itself is, if you remember the slide with the CTO of the Amazon, it's that you are the owner of the keys. You will never lose the access to these crypto keys. And this is the basis of the, let's say, the security in the recent days. So once you encrypt any data, nobody is care about to stealing your data. Everybody is focusing on to get the access to your keys. So once the keys will be stored inside of these clouds, it's not under your control. So we would strictly, let's say, recommend you to have the keys under your control. And even better, you should, let's say, store these data on hardware security modules. It's the best way how to do it. So it was about the, let's say, the first part of how you can fight against the situation with, for example, the artificial intelligence, with the modern techniques that is being leveraged by the hackers. But the second is that you would like to secure somehow your identity, your, let's say, to be sure that if any point, any, I don't know, user to user is communicate, it's definitely these users that you trust to. If any endpoint is representing by, I don't know, server to, I don't know, the end user and some laptop, you have to be sure that this communication is between the user that they trust to each other. So, but for that purposes, for that, let's say, the trust, we are using the authentication of the end users, authentication of the servers. So if you have a look on some statistics or some data, some reports, we can see that this is the report from the cyber risk analytics from that year, that still the interest of let's say, of the hackers or the people that are looking at the stealing some sensitive data is on the credentials. So it is much easier way than to steal your data, than to try to find some encryption keys. It's much easier to steal the credentials, get the access to your application, to your data, and just to get and grab and collect these sensitive information. So how we can help with these tasks? We are approaching the solution that is combined multi-factor authentication with single sign-on and access management. So you can find on the market many of the solutions that is focused on the multi-factor authentication. I also mentioned that there are many of the solutions that is provided by the cloud providers like Microsoft, like IBM or others, but they are strictly focused on their own landscape. But if we are talking about the enterprise customers, they use many of technologies, many of cloud services, and they would like to have just the only one, let's say, the solution system or the solution that will be possible to be used for all of these technologies, all of these the application inside of their infrastructure or outside. It means in the cloud. And multi-factor authentication is only one of the principles that, okay, you will use some other platform, other factor of the authentication, but you would like to also to manage somehow that once anybody has the access to your infrastructure, to your application, that these token, the access token, can be possible to be used to other application. And it's being possible to do it with the session, with the handling of the session, like single sign-on. But, okay, if you will allow to people that will get the access to your infrastructure, for example, to get the valid session token, are you, let's say, willing to give to those users to access to your all application? No, it's not, let's say, the real example, real scenarios on the enterprise level. So most typical scenario is that, okay, I will prove that it's me. It's, for example, done by some multi-factor authentication on a mobile phone or biometric solution or by some chip cards. But then I would like to decide whether this user will have the access to, I don't know, to some financial application, to some HR module, to CRM module, and others. And you can decide on that based on the access management control that we provide to customer as well. So this is the solution that we offer to those customers that are willing to have multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, and also the access management in one kind of the solution. So how does it work? The first of all, we offer many of the ways how to identify the customer or end user for the multi-factor authentication. The most common is SMS, biometric on the mobile phone, OTP push. It means that you will get the the notification into the particular application that is installed on your mobile phone, and then you will just use your fingerprints, or you will put just the PIN into that application, and you will prove that it's you. It's the identity proven solution. You can get also for that that use case the hardware module. It means that you will get the token on which will be the even or time-based the PIN, one-time password PIN that you will just to type into the application that is acquiring for that PIN. Or you can leverage also your PKI infrastructure. If you have already implemented some chip cards that you are using for your PKI, we can use it also for the identity of the end user. Then once you are validated that it's you, it's the user that would get the access to some application, we can assess whether the access to those applications is going through the right device, for example, whether it's going through the validated the company device, or whether this access is going through the mobile phone that is proven, or whether it is coming through the network, I don't know, through the VPN or from some public hotels, the Wi-Fi. And based on that information, whether it is coming from that device or another, let's say, operational system, it will apply the appropriate the access control. So it will allow you to access or disable the access. And it's much, let's say, the wiser. It can also decide whether for that access to the application will be allowed just with the getting the access from the, let's say, the session, or whether it will ask you again for the multi-factor authentication, so you can re-identify yourself again. So how does it look in the real-life scenarios? You will get, you would like to get the access, for example, to Office 365, and you are from the group of C-suite. So based on that, you will get the access to application that is in the list, and then you can decide in the application, as the administrator, you can grant or deny the access to those users from the group C-suite, and you will ask, or you will enforce for every access attempt to be identified by the password and by the token-based authentication. There can be also the implemented, let's say, the integration with the Kerberos tickets, with the PKI in its infrastructure, and based on that, you can, let's say, adjust, or you can somehow adjust the policies for your company, which application will be accessible just with the password, for example, from Active Directory, or you will have to put the OTP into that. So this is just the basic, let's say, the approach how to avoid the situation that there are plenty of, let's say, the modern technologies like artificial intelligence or let's say, machine learning solution. But once you will stick with the basis of, or elementary, the security foundations, like the data encryption and multi-factor authentication, you will not lose, let's say, the control of your data. It is the basis that you have to keep in mind before you will leverage any of the security solution in your company. So it is my, let's say, the recommendation to you, and I believe that once you stick with those principles or recommendation, you will be secure. So thank you for your attention. If there is any questions, I will be...
Yep. Let's take some questions.
Yeah.
There's one over there and one here. Go on. You already have the microphone.
Hello. What are the main strong points of Vormetric Data Secure compared to Microfocus Voltage Secure Data?
I do not hear you.
What are the main strong points of Vormetric Data Secure compared to Voltage from Microfocus?
Yeah, to be really honest, I was working for Microfocus before I joined Thales, so I can compare those, let's say, the solution together. I think that the Thales is more stronger in terms of transparent encryption, so there are two possibilities. As I mentioned, for example, for database, you can leverage the TDE capabilities, embedded capabilities of Oracle, MySQL, or Microsoft SQL, and it's really well integrated with our solution, Thales solution, and also the Vormetric live data transformation is something what is missing to Micro Focus solution. For other areas, for example, that is leveraging the application level security, it means that it's leveraging PKI CS11. The protocols are the same, interface is the same, API like RESTful API, C, Java, and so on. It looks pretty similar, but the most important part is the Vormetric transparent encryption that is, I think, missing right now in Micro Focus. Any other?
Yep, there's a question over there, if you can give a microphone.
Hello. Actually, I have two questions. First question would be, does any of the HSMs provided by Thales have a key attestation feature, which means you get back a signed token from the HSM proving that the keys that you are using for your applications are basically generated and managed directly by the HSM?
Yeah, this is all, let's say, for the asymmetric keys, we stored, let's say, the root of trust or the master keys inside of the HSM. All the derived, the keys are stored or can be stored in the key management solution itself, or can be stored as well in the HSM. So you can decide on what level you would like to be secure on HSM side. But the primary, all the, let's say, the encryption keys, the private keys are stored on HSM side once it is integrated with the key management. If there is no integration, you can operate also the key management solution voltage Vormetric solution without the HSM, and all data will be stored in an encrypted form on the database level inside of the Vormetric. If there is the integration with HSM, you can let HSM to store all of these crypto and also generate. So this is the benefit of the HSM, that all these crypto operations is done on the particular and dedicated the hardware.
Okay, and the second question would be, what are the efforts of Thales towards the quantum cryptography? Do you have any plans, or do you have any roadmap for that to improve these capabilities in the HSM suite?
In terms of the quantum computing, you know maybe better than me that plenty of keys are currently not recommended to be used. For example, 1 kilo keys and something like that. So we approaching right now all of our solutions are currently capable to deal with the 4 kilo keys for the asymmetric communication, and also because we are one of the biggest the producer of the smart card chips or the cards itself. So we also introduced the new capabilities that are possible to deal with the 4 kilo keys there. So there is the expectation that for the quantum computers will not be able to deal with the 4 kilo keys. It's let's say the message, the solution for those, let's say, the rumors that the quantum computer could exist.
All right, I think we have time for one more question.
Okay. Let's assume that my company choose one cloud provider, let's say Amazon or Azure, it's not important, and for both storing data and application running their server over there. Is it possible in some way with this kind of solution to achieve this so-called zero knowledge against the cloud provider? I mean, if I only use the cloud to store the data, it's trivial because I can keep the key on-prem, I do the computation on-prem, and it's fine. The cloud will never see, we will never have the chance to see the clear data. But if I also have to process those data on the cloud, at a certain point, even if I keep the key on a my key manager or a third-party one, the cloud provider will need to have the key in order to use and process the data. So is there some way to achieve that in some, I don't know.
No,
I think you understood the point.
Yeah, I got it. So in terms of the comparison between what is stored on the outside of our organization and what is stored inside of the organization, the approach is pretty the same. So the differences are just in case of where you store the keys. The key vaults that is provided by the cloud providers are, let's say, doing the same trick or the same the task, or it helps you to encrypt the data as same as we are doing it. But the differences are that we store these data and it's controlled by us, and we can do, for example, I mentioned it during the presentation, the rotation of the keys. So this rotation is not let's say, supported by any of the key vaults that is provided by the cloud providers. And in terms of the layers that you apply it, we have plenty of customers that are approaching the encryption on all of these levels. So they started to encrypt the data, for example, on the hardware itself. Then on the file level, so there is other key that is being responsible for the symmetric key that is encrypting those data, and also on the application level. So they have, let's say, the schizophrenic, the solution that they populate all of these data in an encrypted form. So this is the approach that you can apply on the cloud or on the on-prem solution as well. So there is no differences. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you too.